The new Sony XB900Ns are an exciting pair of headphones because they're Sony's newest mid-range ANC headphones that have essentially combined the XB950N1s and the H.ear On 2s into one. Now, obviously, Sony is holding these headphones back so that they don't eat into their 1000XM3 or 1000XM4 sales, but given their price point and performance, I really do like these headphones. The new Sony XB900Ns currently retail for $250, which is the same as the Sony XB950N1s and $50 less than the H.ear On 2s. Again, keep in mind, these are Sony's newest mid-range ANC headphones. But if you want to pick up any of the headphones mentioned in this video, they'll be linked down below. Now first, let's talk about perhaps the most crucial upgrade found on the XB900Ns, and that has got to be their design. Yes, these headphones look very similar to the 1000XM3s, and that's a very good thing. In the past, Sony has always gone for this urban/industrial look on their headphones, which never really worked out because it made their headphones look very bulky and in some cases silly. But thankfully, that's not the case with these headphones. They're fairly low profile and they have a very subtle design this time around. But another important change found on the XB900Ns has got to do with their earpads and leatherette quality. The XB900Ns have slightly redesigned earpads from the 1000XM3s, and they obviously look much more different from the earpads on the XB950N1s and H.ear On 2s. The earpads on the XB900Ns are slightly more spacious than the earpads on the 1000XM3s, and they're way more comfortable than the earpads on the XB950N1s. Now, they're not as spacious as the H.ear On 2s or any Bose headphones, but I do think the XB900Ns are slightly more comfortable than the 1000XM3s because of their redesigned earpads. And overall, these headphones are very comfortable to wear and they are big head approved. But like I mentioned earlier, the leatherette on the XB900Ns have also been upgraded. Now, it doesn't feel as good as Bose's leatherette, but it does feel better than the leatherette found on the 1000XM3s because it doesn't feel as plasticky. But now, let's talk about the included accessories. Just like the XB950N1s and the H.ear On 2s, the XB900Ns come included with a carrying pouch, which means if you plan on traveling a lot with these headphones, I do recommend you invest in a hard shell carrying case. These headphones also come included with a fairly decent 3.5 to 3.5mm audio cable, and they also come included with a USB-C to USB-A charging cable, because, you guessed it, these headphones are now rocking a USB-C port for charging, just like the 1000XM3s. And just like the 1000XM3s, the XB900Ns have an advertised battery life of 30 hours with ANC turned on, which actually is above average for mid-range ANC headphones. But unfortunately, the fast charging on the XB900Ns is not as good as the fast charging on the 1000XM3s because a 10-minute charge from a dead battery is only going to get you 1 hour of playback time, 4 hours less than the 1000XM3s. But for all intents and purposes, the battery life on the XB900Ns is better than the battery life on the XB950N1s and H.ear On 2s, and it's doing that with a much more low-profile body. Now, when it comes to Bluetooth connectivity, unfortunately, just like all of Sony's other headphones, the XB900Ns can only be connected to one device at a time, which means if you're a power user, you're not going to be able to easily hot swap from one device to another. But if you're an Android user, you're going to get extra benefits like NFC, aptX, and LDAC support, but you're also going to notice you're going to get zero latency across the board whenever you try watching videos on your phone. Whereas if you're an iPhone user, you're still going to get zero latency if you watch Netflix, HBO, or DC Universe on your phone, but you are going to get a slight latency whenever you watch YouTube videos. Now, it's a very slight latency and it is easy enough to ignore. But if you're as particular as me, you will notice it. I don't think it's a headphone thing, I think it's an app thing. But now, let's talk about the active noise cancellation on these headphones. Overall, the ANC on the XB900Ns is decent for mid-range ANC headphones because it blocks out a good amount of noise without causing any cabin pressure or background hissing. But the ANC on the XB900Ns is just a hair better than the ANC on the XB950N1s, but the ANC on the XB900Ns isn't as good as the ANC on the H.ear On 2s. And so that you can see for yourself, we're about to jump into an ANC test.
Noise cancelling on.
Like you may have just heard, the ANC on the XB900Ns is very similar to the XB950N1s, but it does block out a touch more noise. But the H.ear On 2s is still blocking out noticeably more noise than the XB900Ns. And it makes sense because Sony probably wants to keep a good ANC performance delta between the 1000XM3 and the XB900N. But overall, the ANC on the XB900Ns is decent because, again, it blocks out a good amount of noise, and it does so without any cabin pressure. But if you are expecting better ANC performance than the XB950N1s, then I'm sorry, it's not. But a feature found on the XB900Ns, which simply isn't available on the XB950N1s, and you have more control over than on the H.ear On 2s, is their Ambient Mode. Through Sony's app, you can go in and select how much sound you like your headphones to pump in, so you can still be aware of your surroundings when you're wearing your headphones. And an ambient mode is great because you can still know what's going on when you're walking around the city, or you can do what I do and have ambient mode turned on when you're watching a movie at home, so that if someone calls your name, you can still hear them. And for the most part, the ambient mode on these headphones have been properly implemented because it sounds natural and there's no background hissing, which is something you don't want to hear when you're watching a quiet scene in a movie. But unfortunately, unlike the ambient mode on the 1000XM3s, the ambient mode on the XB900Ns pump in everything. So they don't actively block out random loud noises like their more premium counterparts. And so that you can see what I'm talking about, here's what I call the clap test. Like you may have just seen, when I clapped with the XB900Ns, they still kept letting in sound, whereas when I clapped with the 1000XM3s, they automatically stopped pumping in all of that ambient sound. This small but very important detail means that if you're wearing these headphones with ambient mode turned on, and if your dog starts barking or if a siren passes by, you're gonna hear all of that through your headphones, which first off is very loud, and you're also gonna get jump scares. Now, even though an ambient mode is pretty standard on a lot of mid-range and premium ANC headphones these days, I don't know of any mid-range ANC headphones whose ambient mode actively blocks out random loud noises, so I'm not going to hold it against the XB900Ns that much. But another feature that simply just isn't available on the outgoing XB950N1s is quick attention, where if you fully cover the touchpad on the XB900Ns, they'll lower the volume of your music and let in all of the ambient sound so you can quickly talk to someone like this. But now, let's talk about how these headphones sound. As the name implies, these headphones are a part of Sony's extra bass headphone lineup made for people who really like bass. And having the bass turned up to a 10 on the 1000XM3s is like having the bass on the XB900Ns set to 5. But even if you're someone who doesn't like too much bass in their music, you can still use these headphones at a lower bass setting, or even have their extra bass feature turned off, because you have full control over how these headphones sound through Sony's app. Plainly said, if you like a lot of bass in your music, you have that option, or if you prefer a neutral sound signature, you also have that option. But personally, I like using these headphones with their clear bass set to 7. And overall, these are a pair of good sounding headphones, and the bass sounds natural and it doesn't overpower the rest of your song. The soundstage and instrument separation on these headphones is good, but what these headphones really allow you to do is to better feel your music. And another reason why I like these headphones so much is because if you watch movies with these headphones with their extra bass feature turned on, you feel like you're actually in the middle of an action scene. It just makes the movie watching experience more epic. But I do think it's important to point out that the XB900Ns have the same amount of bass as the outgoing XB950N1s. But unlike the XB950N1s, the XB900s now have a touchpad to control your music playback. And it's rather bittersweet because I personally really like the control switches found on the XB950N1s. But the touchpad on these newer headphones is just as good as the touchpad found on the N3s. You double tap to play or pause your music, swipe up or down to adjust your volume, and pro tip, you can press and hold to continuously raise your volume, and you swipe front or you swipe back to skip through your music. Personally, I think Sony has one of the best touchpads on headphones because it has good accuracy and it's a good size, and even though there is a slight learning curve, once you get it, you're good to rock and roll. Finally, here's the microphone test. Now, for starters, whenever you try to take a phone call with these headphones are going to automatically set ambient mode to 100%, so you're going to hear everything. But other than that, the microphone on these headphones doesn't sound awful, but it does sound a little muffled compared to AirPods and the recently released Bose NC700s. But this audio clip is being recorded by the microphone found on the Sony XB900N. Sony, we gotta work on your names, but you can be the judge of that. But overall, Sony has garnered a lot of goodwill over the last few months in the premium ANC headphone space with their 1000XM3s. And I think they're on the same track with the XB900Ns and the mid-range ANC headphone space. Sound quality wise, the XB900Ns are going to please both bass heads and people who prefer a neutral sound signature thanks to their fully customizable EQ. And like I mentioned earlier, Sony's extra bass headphones are low-key awesome for watching movies. These headphones are packed to the brim with all of the features you could possibly ask for, like a 30-hour battery life, which is good for about 2 weeks in between charges for me, decent active noise cancellation that blocks out a good amount of noise without any cabin pressure, an ambient mode that sounds natural and doesn't have any distracting background hissing, and they also have voice assistant integration. But personally, I think the most crucial upgrade on the XB900Ns is their new subtle lower profile design. And like I mentioned earlier, I do think these headphones are more comfortable than the Sony 1000XM3s because of their redesigned earpads. And I really do hope we see these new earpads on the Sony 1000XM4s if they come out at IFA 2019. But for right now, I think that if you're looking for a pair of mid-range ANC headphones, I think you can't go wrong with the Sony XB900N. If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit that like button and get subscribed. It helps out more than you realize. If you want to pick any of the products up mentioned in this video, those will be linked in the description down below, and you can also support the channel by checking out the merch store. But other than that, I'll catch you next time.